And if you close it, you can always come back again and then edit it. All right. So that is where, rather than sort of using Microsoft Word or something like that and then uploading it, just type in directly what this problem is. 500 words maximum. I will tell you exactly what needs to be done. You don't need to structure that. Just we would like to know what the problem is. And then there itself, I will take a look at it and I'll give you my feedback, whether it is okay to go ahead or whether it is basically or needs to be what you call refined. So this is the starting point of your final module, right? Now, what is important is the reason why we are having this consultancy project is to help you learn these 3 areas. Apply comprehensive knowledge to analyze and develop strategies for real-world digital supply chain. This is a real-world project. If you are the operations manager or if you are the supply chain manager of an organization, right, this will help you simulate. You've already done some simulation exercises, but here it will allow you to simulate, right, how to rectify a problem, a supply chain problem. And the learning object outcomes number 2 will be demonstrate project management consultancy skills. So there are some theories and that kind of thing that actually goes with it. I'll explain to you as you go along. And then third one is to communicate the findings and recommendations. How would you communicate to an organization, right, the recommendations that needs to be adhered to in order to resolve the problem? Are you clear on this? Are you clear on this? Any questions on this before we go into the details? Right? So read through the guide. Now there is a friendly guide here. You see, you can see my screen. Friendly guide to compile the business consultant project. Read through this one. Read through this one. Read both version 1 and version 1.1. Right? And it will give you in detail how to do your project, how to do this consultancy project. Right? So I'll explain to you in real detail as you go along. Now, once you understand or once you select a supply chain problem, go into the supply chain problem submission point and then type in what this problem is, so that I can take a look at it and then provide you with my feedback. Now, you don't have to rely only one. If you think you are not sure what problem to select, you can just select 2 or 3 problems if you really want, right? So that we can actually have a discussion on this one, and then you can select the most appropriate problem. Are you clear on that? Any questions on that? Any questions? Everyone clear? Right.
Yes, sir.
So, yes, tell me.
No, I told yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So, if you really look at the module, the entire consultancy project report, right, there are 3 sections to this. Hope everyone can see my screen. If the screen is not clear, let me know. So there are 3 sections to this.
It is little bit blur, sir.
Is this blurred? Others also,
Yes.
is it blurred?
Yes, sir. It's blurred.
Right. Okay, give me a sec. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, can you see my screen now? Is it clear?
Now it's clear, sir.
Right. Okay, good. Right. So to come back to where we stopped. So there are 3 sections to your consultancy project report. There are 3 sections to the consultancy project. One is a project proposal, which is 500 words, right? Not more than 500 words. Then the project report, 10,000 words, and we come to something called the reflective practice video. Now, anyway, the project report, the submission date for the project report is, I think, on the 14th of February 2026, if I'm not mistaken, right? If you check the Moodle site, it will give you, if you take the session plan on the Moodle site, it will tell you the submission date for the project report would be somewhere on the 14th of February 2026. It appears to be very far away, but time can fly, and you suddenly realize that you are at the threshold of the submission date, right? So you will have some work to do. Don't sort of take things for granted. But the first things first is the project proposal. So the project proposal, 500 words, have to be uploaded, right, to the Moodle site by the 22nd of November. Because 29th, I think we are starting the supervision. So for you to start the supervision on the 29th, right, you need to finalize. You need to finalize the project. You need to finalize the supply chain problem. Okay, you need to finalize the supply chain problem. So project proposal is all about identifying the problem. So these are the areas that needs to be included here. A brief introduction to the organization, right? You don't need to structure and all the sort of thing. I just want the contents only. What is this organization that you have selected? What kind of organization is this? Is it a service organization? Is it a manufacturing organization? If it is a manufacturing organization, what are the products that it manufactures? If it is a service organization, what kind of services does the organization offer to the customer? So brief introduction, you're talking about 75 words here. Introduction to the organization. Okay. Then we come a brief description of its supply chain. So you need to identify the organization's supply chain. So what kind of supply chain does it have? Right? What are the components of the supply chain that comes directly under the organization's management? Have they outsourced some of these things? Right? You can say for example, if it's a manufacturing organization, say, okay, fine. It has its manufacturing plant, right? If it is a service organization, you can say this is the kind of service that it gives and offers customers. So brief introduction of the organization and the organization's supply chain. So that is important. So it's only 75 words. Brief introduction of the organization. What kind of a organization it is, explanation of what kind of supply chain it has, right? And the components of the supply chain. What are the components of its upstream supply chain and downstream supply chain? Are all these components come directly under the organization's management, or are some of these things outsourced? So things like that. Then number 3 would be identified problem area in the supply chain. Identified problem area in the supply chain. Now that is important, 200 words. This is justifications. Why are you saying that this is a problem? Right? A brief explanation into why you think it is a problem. So you have to be very careful when you talk about the problem. It is not the symptoms that you should be looking at. It's the root cause or sorry, the actual problem per se. Not even the root causes. Root causes will come later. But the problem, I'll give you some examples of that. Now, what kind of a data collection strategies would you embark on when you start your report? So when you start your project report, how would you collect data to identify the problems, the root causes, and that kind of thing? Are you going to use a questionnaire, or are you going to have some one-on-one sessions with decision makers of the organization? Are you going to have interviews? How would you collect your data from the organization to understand the root causes of the identified problem? Or for that matter, for the problem per se. You need to ask somebody in the organization, what is this problem? Can you justify the problem? So you need some data for that. How would you, what kind of how would you collect this data? And then number 5 would be what kind of a limitation and constraints that you would expect. 50 words, right? When you start on your consultancy project. So out of all these 5, what is very important, most important is the problem area, supply chain problem area. Have I made myself clear on this? Any questions on that? The project proposal, 500 words. What is the problem? So remember, project proposal will not be graded. This is not for grading. The grading will be done for the project report, final report, not for the project proposal. Project proposal is to get your project signed off, right? So that then you have set the platform, you have identified the problem, and we have accepted that as a valid problem and relevant supply chain problem, right? Because it has to be a supply chain problem. It has to be a supply chain problem because after all, you're doing a MSc in digital supply chain management. Have I made myself clear? Any questions on that project proposal? Any questions on that? Any questions? Right. So think through this one. You have got enough time now to think. Right. Don't be a rush to write the proposal. Think through that. Your time till 22nd of November to go to the Moodle site and type in. You can type somewhere else and copy and paste and all. That's okay. And then I will look at it and then give you my feedback on that. And then let's have a discussion on that. So that we can actually sign that off. And then you can then start working on your project report. And that you can start on the 29th onwards. Once the project proposal has been validated. Hope I am clear. Are there any questions up to that point? Because this is very important. If you have any questions, if you want any clarifications, please do so now. Because you need to get the platform right. Okay. Good. Looks as I have actually clarified myself, and you're clear about the requirement. Now let's come to the project report. Now, when you come to the project report, right, there are 9 areas that needs to be included in your project report, final report, which is supposed to be submitted on the 14th of February. So the introduction to the selected organization, right? Just expand on what you have already done on the project proposal once it is signed off. It's a matter of now. You have done a brief introduction in the project proposal. You can take that and expand it. Then the problem scenario, which is very important. That's 1750 words. So if you will go into detail as you go along, and I'll explain to you the areas that needs to be included in each of these sections. Not today, but we've got 2 more classes, and in those 2 classes I will tell you. But right now, what is important is for you to be very clear in your mind exactly regarding what this supply chain problem that you intend solving. So in a project report, once you give a brief introduction to the organization, you have to expand on the problem scenario. What is this problem? Why do you think it is a problem? Then what happens is you need to look at the analytical models. You have already done these, right, during your studies. Like pestle analysis, SWOT analysis, McKinsey's, then so many other models are there, right? So you need to pick and select the relevant models, the models that are relevant to your own problem scenario, right? And then using the models, analyze your organization and the relevance, right, it has to the problem that you have identified, right? We'll go through that one as you go along. I will explain to you exactly how to do that. So once number 3 is done, you go to number 4. That's about literature review. It's about what other writers have said. What writers have said about this particular problem, and then how this problem can be solved using technology. So this is about not what you are saying. Remember this. You need to be very clear. Number 4 under project report is the literature review. Is about what writers have said. So you need to review literature on what writers have said about this particular problem and how the problem needs to be solved using technology. Then number 5, you need to draw a digital roadmap. A digital roadmap. That is, as 750 words, you need to basically state, right, in a table or something like that. What is the first thing that you recommend that the organization should do? Second thing, third thing, fourth thing, fifth, and the time that it will take. That's a digital roadmap. The stages of your project, of the recommendations. Then the digital transformation initiative, 6. Then you talk about what kind of technology can be used to resolve this problem. What kind of technology that can be used to resolve this problem. Now remember, by this time you would have, in your problem scenario, you would have identified the root causes as well. In your problem scenario, you would have the problem, and then you would have identified the root causes, right, of the problem. So in your digital transformation initiative, you need to link this one to the root causes. How would you use technology, right, to alleviate, right, the root problem of the identified, or the root causes of the identified problem scenario. That's number 6. And number 7, now this is a project. So you're recommending that these are things that needs to be done. But what are the resources that are required by the organization? Resources can be financial, human, equipment, technology, and so forth. So that's 250 words only. Just identify what are the resources that are required for this organization, right, to do this digital transformation. And then the 8th one would be managing change. Okay, fine. So now you've got the recommendations, you know what the organization needs to do. Now you need to tell, right, the organization how to manage this change. There'll be resistance to change. So you would have studied about change management when you did your human resources management, HRM. So look at some of these theories in change management and then tell us, right? Or tell the organization how the organization should manage the required change. How would they overcome resistance to change and so forth. So those are the 8 things that area that needs to be included in your project report. This 10,000 words project report, and then followed by the references. Right, the details of this I will tell you, but right now you don't have to focus on this one. When you do your supervision, when I do your supervision, when we embark on your project, then I will take you through each of these as you go along. You will have to sort of do something on your own, and then I will take a look at what you have done and then direct you. So in reality, there's absolutely no way you can fail this module, right? Because you will always be directed. And it does not mean that I'll be going to mark your module. So keep that in mind. I'm not going to say if it is good or bad, but I will basically tell this is the direction that you should be taking it. So based on that, you need to refine it. And if you do that, then obviously you will actually get reasonably good marks. Right? Any questions on that until that point? Project report, 10,000 words. Anything that you need clarified? Anything that is not clear? Okay, so project report is that. So we will actually, I mean, you will be working more, you will be working into the details of this project report as you go along, and then you will be supervised, right? So there are actually 3 or 4 supervision points where I will take a look at each of your work, and then provide you with individual feedback, so that you know you are directed properly based on the requirements of the university, right? So project report is that. So once the project report is done, you don't have to worry too much about this reflective practice video at this point of time. That will come right at the end. At the end, you need to create a video for 10 minutes using a presentation or PowerPoint presentation background, right? You need to record a video on a personal reflection. What are the challenges that you face, right? How were you able to achieve your learning outcomes? What are the relevant experience gained, and how would that experience help you in your future career aspirations? Did you identify any development needs, and how would you ensure that you cater to that development needs, the time frame, and so forth and all, right? So just 10 minutes on a reflection about you, not about anything else. Reflection about the challenges that you face and how you overcome these challenges and so forth and all. So therefore, this has to come right at the end. Don't worry about that at this point of time. We'll tell you when, right? First, because first is the project report. Once you get the project report out of the way, then you can start working on your reflective practice video. Are you clear on this? Are you clear on this? Any questions, any clarifications, any areas that you are not clear, any gray areas? Okay, fine. So let's move to the next one. So this is the indicative bibliography and the books and the resources that you can access for your final report, right? Core textbooks and so forth and all sort of things. These are all available either in the library or else online, right? So take a look at this. Then we move to the start. So the starting point is, remember this: select an organization of your choice, study its supply chain, and identify a problem in supply chain. These 3 areas are very important. So keep this in the back of your mind always. If you make a mistake here, what is going to happen is you will be just wasting your time. So select an organization of your choice. Decide on that. If you can't decide, let's have a discussion on this, so that you are clear in your mind exactly which organization is most suited for this kind of a project. Then you need to study supply chain. So you've got about 2-3 weeks here to study the supply chain. Look at its supply chain. Speak to people, right? Speak to some of these guys. Find out what sort of a problem that these guys would have, or these people have experienced in the supply chains, right? Because supply chains are notorious for problems. There's so many problems. But you need to be very clear about the real problem, right? Not the perspective. I'll explain to you the difference. So once that problem is done, once you identify supply chain, identify the problem, then this is where you just, fill in your proposal. Just go into and just say, this is the type of organization that you have selected. This is the type of supply chain problem that you want to work with. and to find resolutions to the supply chain problem and so forth, right? And then remember, this is easier said than done. You will have, when you ask questions about the problem in a supply chain, you may get a symptom and you consider the symptom as a problem. The symptom is not a problem. You need to work, you need to drill it down to find out what the real problem is. What the real problem is. Now, give an example. Look at this. So you're putting a, so let's say you wear the cap of a consultant and you go into an organization and the organization is saying, our warehouse is spilling over with products. However, the sales force and the customers complain out of stock situation for most products. In addition, the finance division complains of an overstock situation, right? And has been forced to regularly provide for slow moving and obsolete items or write things off. Ironically, most of the other internal operational KPIs are within target range. So manufacturing, supplier KPIs are fantastic. But the warehouse is spilling over with products. No space to keep the products. And you would normally assume that the customers would be really happy. But the customers also not happy. Because each time a customer wants to place an order, that particular product is not in stock. But from an internal perspective, you see the warehouse full of stocks. So what is the problem here? What is the problem here? The problem is the quality of stocks. So unwanted items are being stocked in the warehouse. So the client says he has no idea why in spite of inventory filling maximum warehouse capacity and maintaining other operational KPIs according to the target, there are regular stockouts. And that contributes to customer dissatisfaction. So this is a real world problem. This is a real world problem. Example of a real world problem. So you need to find problems similar to this. You need to find problems similar to this. Right? You need to go deep into it to find out exactly. Right. So don't talk about the. So for example, if somebody says loss of market share, they can say that. No, they can come and say there's a loss of market share. So loss of market share, okay, is a valid problem, but is it a valid problem? Loss of market share is a symptom of an internal problem. So you need to find what that is. That's the whole purpose of, in other words, you're talking about the root causes. The root causes of the problem. Right? So that is why we're giving you a little bit of time to go deep into it. You've got about 2-3 weeks now until the 22nd of November to start recognizing a supply chain problem. Recognize a supply chain problem, not the symptoms per se. Then if you're not sure, if you have about 2-3 things, just put those 2-3 things into the proposal. Let's have a discussion on this and let's weed out the symptoms and be clear about what the problem is. But you will need data, remember this, huh? You will need some information. So you need to ask some questions, interview some people, right, to get deep into the problem. Have I made myself clear on this? Have I made myself clear on this? So think. You need a lot of thinking that needs to actually go in here. Right? So let's look at the approach that you can take when you start your report. when you start your consultancy project. Now let's link this one to this particular problem about the warehouse spilling over with items, but apparently there's a wrong items in stock. Because although the warehouse is full of items, they are not the items that the customer wants. So there's something radically wrong. But your manufacturing KPIs are good, your sourcing and procurement KPIs are good. So what is the problem? Right? So here we are speculating that it's a quality of inventory. The wrong stocks in the warehouse. Stocks or items that should not be in inventory are in inventory. But how come? How come? The real business world case. So the questions that you can ask, right? How do they decide which items to hold in stock? How does the organization decide on that? What are the inventory control methods that are used to manage inventory? Are these based on historical data? Do they have a formal way of classifying inventory into fast moving, slow moving, ABC, and do they use a demand forecast to make end-to-end supply chain decisions? How reliable are their suppliers? Does procurement face constraints in sourcing raw materials for manufacturing? Are manufacturing KPIs aligned with downstream customer service indicators? Are these aligned? Or are they working in silos? What is the level of collaboration that exists among stakeholders in supply chain? If the distribution and your warehousing, are they consciously talking with procurement and manufacturing? Right? Do they know exactly what the market demands? Does the supply chain have end-to-end visibility of information flows? Right? Do they have an SNOP process, right, where all these stakeholders get together once a month to discuss what the future demand should be, and then how the organization should be fulfilling that demand, or whether the organization has the capability of fulfilling this demand, and if not, what action the organization needs to take. Then what is the technology that is used to integrate process flows in the supply chain? Does the physical infrastructure support this in? Let's say, for example, if you have a warehouse is spilling over with inventory, with stocks. Does that mean there is no space in the warehouse? Is the physical infrastructure is a problem? So there's so many things that can contribute towards what you identify as a problem. So you need to verify. And once you identify the problem, then only you need to move it to the next step as to how to resolve the problem. Because if you are not sure about the problem, then you will be probably resolving something that has no direct relevance to the problem. So you need to be very, very careful, right, in identifying what the problem scenario is. Are you clear on this? Are you clear on this? Are you clear on this? So when you start your report, we'll actually go through that. So to define the problem with justifications, right? Right. Look at specific. Look at sort of measurable outcomes, right? And the solution that you intend providing should benefit the entire organization as a whole, not only the supply chain per se. So keep that in mind. So there is something called the problem definition worksheet that you should use when you define the problem, not for the proposal. This is not for the proposal. This is when you start working on your project. But it's good to know this at this point of time. So these are the 6 areas that you need to look at. Decision makers. Who are these decision makers? Who are the people who are impacted by this? Inventory manager, supply chain manager, customer, right? Marketing division, financial division. So you are addressing these. Who are the people whom you are addressing? What are the key forces acting on decision makers? What are the concerns and issues around the decisions that organizations, these guys face? Let's say, for example, in the case of the warehouse bringing in stocks. So what are the decisions that the warehouse manager can take, and what are the constraints that the warehouse manager have in making these decisions? Are there any constraints? Are people not listening to him? Right? Is there a communication gap? So the key forces acting on the decision makers are very important. Is the operation strategy, not quite right? Is the operation strategy not aligned to the business strategy? Then what is off limits or under consideration? So let's take this problem about the warehouse, having excess stocks. Now, probably the organization says there's absolutely no money for us to increase the infrastructure, right? So what is off limits is building a new warehouse is out of the question. And expanding the current warehouse is also out of the question. That's the constraint. That's a real world constraint. So these you need to identify. You need to identify, right? When you start deciding on what the supply chain problem is. Right, how would you then measure, right? If the recommendations have been successful, now you're supposed to actually provide recommendations to alleviate the problem. So how would you measure, once the recommendations are put in place, what are the key performance indicators that you would use to measure success? And what is the time frame? How quickly does the organization require, right? Is it top urgent, or can they sort of, are they willing to sort of work, right, the way that they have been worked until this is alleviated in a gradual way? So time frame, it could be 1 week, it could be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Focus on that. And what level of accuracy is needed, right? It depends on the context, it depends on the type of problem, right? Do you need 100% efficiency, or are you happy with 95% efficiency? So that kind of thing. What kind of accuracy is needed? If the problem is with the demand forecast, what kind of accuracy, forecast accuracy is required? 100% or happy with 80%? Right. So that's more or less what you need to focus on. And now when you come to the consultancy project, once you decide on the problem, now in this case, the problem is inventory quality is poor, because what should be in inventory is not in inventory, right? So inventory quality is poor. So the effectiveness of inventory management processes in ensuring that the right quantity and quality of goods are available at the right time while minimizing costs and risks. It's about balancing supply with demand to prevent stockouts, excess inventory, or obsolescence. That is your problem. Now the logic tree means once you have the problem here, then these are the probable root causes to the problem. What are the reasons why there is this problem? Control mechanism. Number one, models used, methods used. Are the methods used in managing or controlling inventory adequate? Right? Sourcing. Is it a sourcing problem? Is there a problem with supply relationship, supply reliability, supply visibility? Is the problem in manufacturing? Is the problem in process efficiency, process capability? The key performance indicators that are used to measure efficiency, are they reliable? Machine utilization issues, right? If you are looking at process analysis, you can even talk about things like what? Bottlenecks and so forth and all. Then demand profile, forecasting errors, dependency on historical data. Do they have, is the demand forecast reliable? In other words, absence of predictive analysis. What could be another root cause for inventory quality being poor? Collaboration. Are supply chain stakeholders working in silos? Are they working together as a team? Infrastructure. Is the warehousing infrastructure needs a major overhaul? Right? Is it too small for the operation? Technology. What kind of technology does the organization use? Are they still resort to legacy systems? Are they using state-of-the-art, technology that have been used by organizations in the digital world? What? So this is the logic tree that you need to come up with when you start working on your project. Actually, up to this point, this covers chapter 1. Chapter 1, up to this point, if you come up to logic tree, then the chapter 1 of your project report would be done. So this is to give you a flavor of what to expect when you start working. Are you clear? So I'm going to stop there now for today, just to give you time to think. Right? So what is extremely important now is to define the supply chain problem, identify the supply chain problem. Right? Clear? So without identifying the supply chain problem, then say for example, if you define the problem wrong, then all this work in the logic tree would be wrong. No? Your root causes, you will be looking at root causes which are not relevant to whatever problem that you think it is. Right? You need to get your supply chain problem. If the supply chain problem is not a problem, then you'll be just wasting your time. You need to look at it from multiple perspectives, look at data, speak to people, right? Understand what their requirements are, and assess to see whether the problem is reliable or whether the problem is relevant. Is a relevant problem, and can that be considered as a major problem, right, to run the organization's supply chain efficiently? Okay, so that's, I think, enough for today. So you have got probably about 2 to 3 weeks to think about the problem, and then start writing your problem, the problem description or problem specification in the space provided in the Moodle. Just click on that supply, the link or the area that says supply chain problem, and it'll open up a box where you can start entering your 500 words. And then let's take a look at it, but start thinking rather than sort of jumping into writing the problem at this point of time. Think through this one, get some facts, get some data, right? Speak to people in the specified organization, select a good organization, right? And then you can start drafting your problem scenario. Have I made myself clear? Are we clear on this? Any questions that needs clarification, or any areas that needs clarification? Anyone? Questions? Right. So looks at no question. So you got time now to think through this. Think through a supply chain problem in an organization, and then start thinking of writing the proposal right on the Moodle site. But you have to do that on the 22nd. Before 22nd you have to do that, because after 22nd you have only got 1 week. After 22nd you have got only 1 week, right, before the clock starts ticking. On the 29th the clock starts ticking with the first supervisory session. There we will actually take you into details. And next week I will take you through the rest of the chapters that are required to be included in your final report. So just to actually give you provide you with an understanding as to what is required, so that you can keep that in the back of your mind, and then start reading the friendly guide to the consultancy report that is located in your Moodle site. Those of you if you do not have access to the Moodle site, just reach out to the next student services and get the assistance. Okay, no questions? Everything clear? Right, so let's wind up for today, and we'll start thinking about your business problem, and we'll catch up again next week, Saturday. Okay, thank you. Thanks for your participation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.